My therapist said, he said, you're like that guy from Greek myth who keeps rolling a stone up a hill and then it rolls down again. I said, Sisyphus? And then he said, yeah, and proceeded to pronounce it 3 different ways. And I thought, where have you been, man? Haven't you been listening? I can't be Sisyphus because the stone I heave against never seems to get any closer to the top of the hill. I'm more like that other guy, Prometheus, chained to a rock for trying to teach people, and every night his liver gets pecked out by birds, and then it grows back again by morning so that it can be pecked out again. My therapist said, yeah, the Greeks didn't really have happy stories. I suppose not in the European sense of happily ever after, although any therapist ought to know that happiness does not stand still forever. It's a slippery, shape-shifting thing. Even true love has to keep evolving if it's going to survive. And I wouldn't call the Prometheus story a sad one. Yes, he'll always be chained to that rock, getting jabbed at by birds, but to me, that's a happy ending because his liver keeps regenerating. And no matter how many times I try pushing the stone that never moves toward the top of the hill, my will to keep pushing it keeps growing back. Plenty of people get their heart ripped out one time and give up. I got heartbroken pretty bad this spring, not romantically, but I had some losses. And that's in addition to Christmas time, when a surgeon literally ripped my guts out. It turns out career setbacks can be more painful than losing a foot of your intestine. But either way, I'm healing and excited for the next round. So my therapist said that at noon, and then at dinner, my son William started talking about Greek mythology and how the stories tend to end badly, and I was really impressed that he could cite some examples by name. He does not learn it from me, but he learns it at school. I feel bad for elementary school teachers who must year after year cite modern comparisons saying, yes, this video game, yes, this cartoon, yes, this comic book, it's all like Greek mythology. Attempting to keep the old myths relevant by constantly comparing them with something new, making these old stories the answer to a question that 4th graders didn't ask. That is an appropriate time to bring up the myth of Sisyphus. Once you've perfected your comparison of Spider-Man and Achilles, Spider-Man falls out of style, and you have to start over again comparing Super Mario to Theseus, or comparing Supergirl to Icarus, or whatever comparison you've got to do this year. Anyway, William's comment was the second time that day that I'd heard someone say this thing about Greek mythological gloom. And I once again started thinking about what must be his point of comparison. European myths with happily ever afters. Were Europeans really more cheerful than ancient Athenians? I doubt it. Granted, the Europeans I grew up around were Holocaust survivors, so I think some pessimism is understandable. But it also seemed that what helped them to survive all of that horror was a grim sense of humor, and their stories were darkly comical. And I would ask to hear them again and again, like the story of when my grandfather got shot by a firing squad, and he still had bullets in him when he told it, 40 years later, but he was also laughing in his own dark Hungarian way. And he was living a happily ever after because he was on a different continent, telling a story to grandchildren who had been born decades later. My grandfather had successfully come to the United States and assimilated and learned the language and kind of disappeared. The European fairy tale generally begins and ends in anonymity. The characters often don't have names. They are the girl in the red hood, or the princess, or the boy. And even when they have names, they tend to be generic names like Jack. Anybody can be Jack. And they go through some growth experience, and then they return to anonymity. That's the Hungarian-American dream, to become one of the indeterminate immigrants in an apartment in Queens. You know, some people live in New York City because they want to be big shots, but most people live there because they want to be anonymous. Fairy tales are about nobodies. Myths are about somebodies. Kings and champions and demigods with legendary ancestors and complex identities. Big personalities with tragic flaws that come from their ancestry and their complexity. In myths, the exalted are humbled, and in fairy tales, the humble are exalted, but not enough to become complex and tragic. In the European village setting, happily ever after really just means that the cycles of life will roll on and nothing will ever really change. Whereas Greek myths tend to tell us that such and such character got steamrolled or whatnot, so that a new country could be founded, or a new flower could bloom, or a new champion could be born. The Greek myth ends badly for its hero. And hero originally meant a person you sacrifice so that everyone else can survive. That's the origin of the Greek word hero. Greek myths end badly for their heroes, but they end well for the listener, who lives with the benefit of whatever that mythological character's suffering produced. Prometheus, they say, gave humanity the gift of fire, the ability to purify food, forge metal, turn forests into plantations. The listener gets a lot from Prometheus. Cinderella got the prince. They married. And the peasants who cherish the story look around the feudal system, and the feudal system is just as feudal. The Dark Age is just as dark. Life is just as nasty, brutish, and short. Cinderella got the prince, and nothing has changed. The fairy godmother could transform pumpkins into a coach, but could not transform monarchy into a democratic or socialist utopia. And if the Cinderella story continued, she would become the wicked stepmother of the next generation, the insecure queen who ordered an assassin to kill Snow White because she still wanted to be the fairest of them all. That's a natural cycle. And when you live and die in that, it's best to have some kindly grandmother tell you a story that ends well, to give you the will to keep going. In this way, we could say that European happy endings were born from a deep pessimism. The Greek myth expresses optimism, very cautious optimism. The core lesson of Greek mythology is moderation. Shine, but don't shine too bright. Fly, but don't fly too high. Don't attract the attention of the gods. If you're too beautiful, too intelligent, too mighty, it'll make you a target for divine jealousy and wrath. Cinderella would have been 2 steps into her dance with the prince before Aphrodite or Apollo swooped down to turn her into a pumpkin or an enchanted tree. For the Greeks, moderation was a matter of survival, because they were always overshadowed by the cultures around them. So Greek mythology is always cautioning us not to try too hard, not to want too much, because then the gods get snippy and it's bad for everyone. In myth, personal happiness must be sacrificed for the greater good. In fairy tale, personal happiness contributes to the greater good. The generic character will live happily ever after, and that's good for all of us. It gives us hope not only for our own happiness, but also that the neighbors in our community have struggled and grown and found contentment, and this helps to keep society healthy. In the 21st century, there's been a shift in the way we look at fairy tales, seeing the old story again from the perspective of the antagonist, or really the protagonist, since it's usually the wicked queens and witches who drive the story forward, while the princes and princesses and fairies have to come up with ways to thwart them. Marginalized characters get moved to the center, and this approach can be really illuminating, especially since fairy tale villains tend to be more interesting than good girls and princesses. But once you put the Wicked Witch at center stage, your fairy tale turns into a Greek tragedy about someone who is deeply flawed, or wants too much, or flies too high, and then must suffer and fall for the greater good of the community. Bruno Bettelheim, the author of Uses of Enchantment, The Meaning and Importance of Fairy Tales, writes that these old stories represent milestones and turning points in the human quest for meaning. We spend a lot of time teaching children how to do something, but not necessarily why, or what it means to be human, and how what it means to be human changes at different points in the life cycle. Fairy tales, he says, can convey these essential lessons, which a biology textbook or a set of Lego instructions cannot. Fairy tales teach us that anyone, even peasants and unwanted children, can live happily ever after, and personal happiness contributes to the health of the global village. That's a good lesson for kids. Maybe later in life, as we discover our own complexity and limits, we feel more bonded with tragedy, not because it ends badly, but because we want to feel that our personal suffering can also contribute something essential to the health of the world and the community. All of us in this room are at different stages in life and self-discovery. We may not all feel like our lives have mythic proportions or that we're living in a fairy tale, but our lives do have meaning, and our joys and sorrows contribute to the health of the community of life. Thank you. Do we have any announcements today? Yes, please.
Thank you. So our dinner is scheduled for 2 weeks from this coming Wednesday. It's July 22nd at LaSalle Yacht Club. And as of right now, we don't have enough responses to carry through with the dinner. So if you haven't responded and you're planning on coming, please let me know as soon as possible, because it's been in the announcements, and I know we've had it in the power line and we've brought it up here. So I think, because we're kind of the same group each week, we're kind of preaching to the choir here, I think. So, we'll try to reach out again with emails to everybody. So hopefully we get more responses and we can carry through with our dinner, because I know we all have such a good time. So if you haven't let me know and you're coming, please do so.
I don't know, maybe that turned out to be a gloomy one. I thought it was going to be kind of fun, but I don't. But I'll tell you. No, I won't. I know. You know what? I didn't start, and I was driving here. I couldn't come up with one. The only one I could come up with, was the one about the priest and the minister and the rabbi in the desert. Did I tell that one? Wait a minute. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so the priest, the minister, and the rabbi were walking in the desert, and a genie appeared before them and said, I've come to grant you 3 wishes. And they said, we wish for water. He said, hold on there. I'm not an angel. I'm a genie. I'm not going to give you water. You have to think of something else. And of the 3 wishes, you each only get 1. And the priest said, you know what? Actually, yeah, fine. This black robe is killing me. Could I please have a white cassock instead? And just poof, suddenly he was dressed all in white. And the minister said, you know what? This sun is so hot. Could I have an umbrella? And poof, he got an umbrella. And the rabbi said, yes. And I would like a car door. And just poof, just the door of a car appeared. And the other 2 looked at this. They said, why? Why the door of a car? The rabbi said, because in this heat, I can roll down the window. I know, and that was the only one I could think of on the drive here. I thought, I'm not even going to tell it, because I don't think of it that funny. Actually, I could think of a lot of jokes on the drive here, and they all ended so badly. And I was like, no, these are all really gloomy stories. So maybe that's why I like the rabbi with the car window. Anyway. Okay, all right, I'll hold on to it. I don't think I've ever told it before. All right. But yeah, you're right, I do feel better now. Together, we have sanctified this space. If you have found strength and comfort here, share some out there. Remember that you are blessed, and you are a blessing, and you are not alone. Please join me for the words of extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. All right, now this song I know you can sing along with, because the refrain of this song doesn't even have words. It's just la, la, la. So, once you've... That's right. And I actually like this. Okay. The other person I finally got to see recently was Paul Simon, and it reminded me I can actually play one Paul Simon song, and I'm only going to play part of it today because the end of it makes me really sad. But do we know the song "The Boxer"? Can we sing at least the refrain of "The Boxer" together? Does my voice go that high? I think I play this in C. I'm just a poor boy, though my story's seldom told. I have squandered my resistance for a pocket full of mumbles, such are promises. All lies and jest, still the man hears what he wants to hear, and he disregards the rest. When I left my home and my family, I was no more than a boy in the company of strangers, in the quiet of the railway station, running scared, laying low, seeking out the poorer quarters where the ragged people go, looking for the places only they would know. La la la, la 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 la, la 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 la. Asking only workman's wages, I come looking for a job, but I get no offers. just to come on from the girls on 7th Avenue. I do declare there were times when I was so lonesome I took some comfort there. La 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 la. Into the refrain again. La la la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. Now I'm laying out my winter clothes and wishing I was home, going home, where the New York City winters aren't bleeding me, going home. I'll try it. In a clearing stands a boxer and a fighter by his trade, and he carries a reminder of every glove that laid him down or cut him till he cried out in his anger and his shame, I am leaving, but the fighter still remains. La la la, la 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la. La 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 la. All right, good. Good job. Yes, I think so. Okay.